Okay, before I get into the main topic of what I wanted this video to be about, I did want to touch up on something on Raw this week and actually throw some praise towards the WWE for how they handled the Paul Heyman-CM Punk relationship, or partnership, which I guess is now an official thing. They handled that extremely well. First of all, I'm fully in favor of them doing this because I think even though CM Punk doesn't need a mouthpiece, that isn't the sole benefit of a manager. I think if the guy is right and the guy fills the role correctly, very much like Bobby Heenan did for Kurt Hennig, you give CM Punk somebody like a Paul Heyman, it just adds so much credibility and just adds a whole new dimension to the character that they could eventually play off of. It's like, are Punk and Brock going to be partners now, or is there going to be some sort of antagonistic thing between them, with Heyman having to split attention between both of them? I don't know. It's something worth tuning into, and it's worth finding out. And I love the idea of Paul Heyman being paired up with CM Punk. I think those two are going to mesh together perfectly. But in terms of how they actually set it up and how they handled it, it was so subtle and so just brilliantly done. You know, normally in the WWE, there's a tendency to just beat you over the head with whatever the revelation is or whatever point that it is they're trying to make. They're just going to beat you over the fucking head with it to make sure that it sinks into your thick skull. Because sometimes I think the WWE thinks their audience is full of morons, so they just kind of... that's how they portray their show. They make it idiot-proof, I guess. But here, what I loved is that they set it up earlier in the show when Punk walked out. And he got into the car and drove away. But he wasn't driving the car. And it was so... they didn't treat it like it was a big thing. It was just a little thing that I kind of noticed. And I was like, well, who's driving that car? And, you know, it's one of those things. They planted the seed for Paul Heyman to show up later in the show, which was great. And it was a payoff to something small that you probably didn't even think about. Honestly, if they had never mentioned it again, that Punk had a driver... if they'd never brought it up again, never mentioned it, you wouldn't say a word. But when they did the Paul Heyman thing, you can kind of connect back and be like, oh, they set it up earlier in the show without us even realizing it. And I thought that was so subtle and so cleverly done, and a much better way of doing things than what they typically do. Okay, now on to the main topic at hand, which is the Bound for Glory series, which it hasn't concluded yet. We still got 2 more matches on Impact this week. And then we have the No Surrender pay-per-view where we'll have the finals. But I feel like I can, you know, give my overall impressions on how the Bound for Glory series has gone so far. And what I think of it. And if you've watched my previous videos, you know that I have applauded TNA for this concept. I think it's one of the best ideas they've ever come up with, ever. In the entire, you know, 10-plus years that they've been in existence, I'm like, this is one of the very best ideas they've ever had creatively, because... it's such an easy thing to follow. I loved the idea last year, even though it wasn't as well executed. And I've said it before, the reason it works is because it makes the outcomes of the matches matter. That's why it works. More than any other reason, that is the main reason why the Bound for Glory series works. It actually gives wins and losses a level of significance that a lot of matches, especially on TV, don't have. I've talked about it before where guys will be on a losing streak where they'll lose 15 matches in a row and then they'll win 2 matches and all of a sudden they're contending for a belt. Or how many matches end in a no contest and they don't even announce who the winner is, so because it's like it doesn't matter. It's like, oh, if there's a run-in, there's just no winner, and it doesn't matter. You're not even going to remember this in a week, so who cares? But the Bound for Glory series puts the significance back into wins and losses and say, hey, if you lose, you're not getting a title shot. If you win a bunch of matches, you increase your chances of getting a title shot. And it works like a playoff system for their biggest pay-per-view of the year. It's one of the reasons I love the Royal Rumble. It's basically the playoffs to WrestleMania. And I love the Royal Rumble is one of the best ideas the WWE has ever had. And I kind of feel the same way here about the Bound for Glory series. In terms of how they've executed it this year, I'd say it's about 2 or 3 steps forward from the previous time they did this, and maybe a small half a step backwards. Where they faltered was last year, one of the components of the Bound for Glory series that I really liked was that they would show footage from house shows and tell us, hey, Bound for Glory series update, you know, so-and-so defeated so-and-so at this show in Bumblefuck, Wyoming, I don't know. And that was really cool, and I think it was cool to have that kind of footage that happened over the weekend that we didn't see, and to just give us updates over what's going on. Kind of like when I hate to make another football comparison, but it's kind of like when you're watching a football game, and then mid-game you'll get clips from another game just to give you an update on what's going on and things of that nature. So it's cool. And they didn't do that this year, and that kind of disappointed me. It was actually one of my favorite parts of it last year, and I was hoping that they would do it again this year, and or at the very least make those matches available to us on their YouTube page or something. Just to, I do like that they do include house show matches in the series. I think it gives you more of an attraction when you actually go to the live events rather than, because I think some people take the attitude of, oh, house shows don't matter. They're just kind of practice matches and that's it. But here it's like, no, the storylines continue through TV and through the house shows and through pay-per-views as well. So I really like that idea of it. Another minor knock that I'm going to throw towards the series is that what I love about the scoring system is that it inspires creativity. It's one of the reasons that I talked about a couple videos ago about why I like, or at least I'm interested in the idea of showing the stats after each match, just to kind of illustrate the story of what's going on, because I think it would force a level of creativity and innovation on the part of the wrestlers to be a little bit more creative with their matches, rather than just doing the same formula over and over again. And last year's Bound for Glory series did that, and there was a little bit of that this year, especially with Samoa Joe's matches. Samoa Joe's matches throughout the series were great because he had a different strategy every single time. His match with AJ Styles last week was so good. Like, one of the most brilliantly put together matches I've seen in a while. And it was so simple. It wasn't anything spectacular. It was just, hey, these two have wrestled each other 8 million times. Joe knows every trick in AJ's book, so he was kind of prepared for everything that AJ was going to do. And AJ wanted to secure his spot in the Final Four, so he kept going for a submission victory, and he had, like, counters for a lot of Joe's submissions, and would and they kept playing a tit-for-tat game, just countering and reversing each other, rather than just doing the typical, heel beats up babyface, babyface makes a comeback, they kick out of finishers, and then they do whatever the finish is. It was a very creative match, and I wish the Bound for Glory series had a lot more matches like that. It seemed to be more prevalent last year, not so much this year. Like, for example, Mr. Anderson's last match was against Bully Ray, and he needed to win by submission to keep his hope alive in the Bound for Glory series. He ended up winning by pinfall, and he didn't even really go for submissions, and they kind of just worked a regular match. And it wasn't a bad match or anything. I was just sitting there the whole time thinking, like, why isn't he going for submissions? That should be his strategy. I just wish, and I think it should. I think the Bound for Glory series, the way it's set up and the way it's structured, should inspire a more creative way of putting matches together rather than just doing the typical formula. And I wish I'd seen more of that this year. But other than that, they fixed the series in some great ways. One of the major complaints about last year's Bound for Glory series is that there wasn't any equality in how many matches each guy had. Like, I think Gunner had around 17 matches, and some guys had as few as 9 or 10. They fixed that problem this year by making sure that everybody wrestles the same amount of matches. I like that they did. They started off with the gauntlet to, with the winner getting an early lead. I liked that the Hardcore Justice pay-per-view, they did specialty matches to kind of like give an added flavor to the Bound for Glory series and to the pay-per-view as a whole, and just as sort of an extra chance to gain some extra points throughout the series without messing up the number of matches that each guy's supposed to have. I really like that, and I love the Bound for Glory series. And I gotta say, heading into Impact this week, and we got No Surrender this weekend, I still don't know who's gonna win this thing. I'm kind of like, maybe it's gonna be Storm, or maybe it'll be, I don't know what his contract situation is, but maybe it'll be Bully Ray. Maybe the winner will ultimately be the guy who's revealed to be behind the aces and eights. And I was like, well, maybe it's Samoa Joe. Maybe it's Bully Ray. I don't know. It's really a mystery. I don't know who's going to win this thing. And that's really fascinating and kind of interesting. It makes me want to tune into Impact this week just to see who's finalized in the Final Four, and then tune into No Surrender to see who ultimately wins it. And that's another selling point of it, going back to what I said about house shows and what I just said. It's a flowing storyline throughout 3 months. It's the playoff season for Bound for Glory, basically, and it's updated and changed every week. And it's a flowing storyline. And that to me is interesting. It's a very sports-like storyline, but it's a storyline nonetheless. And it's just very fascinating to me. I really enjoy it. And again, TNA, keep doing this. Do not drop the Bound for Glory series. This is one of the best ideas you have ever had. And, some people would probably be snarky and say that you can count all of TNA's good ideas on one hand, but this is one of them. I swear to God, this is a really good idea, and I'm glad that they improved upon it this year, and I'm glad that it's been the success that it is. I think it adds so much to Impact every week. It makes it such a better show just having those matches there and having that flowing playoff system in place. It's just great, and it adds a lot of significance to Bound for Glory, and it kind of makes it kind of whets my appetite and builds anticipation for that pay-per-view months in advance. Even if they don't have anything major in place at the moment, the fact that the Bound for Glory series is going on means that they're building towards Bound for Glory. And it's just a great idea, great concept. I applaud TNA for doing it. And here's hoping it ends in a great way. We've got 2 more matches this week and 3 more at the pay-per-view. So, here goes, and hopefully they make a good decision in regards to who ultimately wins it.